Hello, my name's Mark Lee. Thanks for watching this short video about LinkedIn and how you can get best value from it and from the time that you spend on it. Over the next 2 or 3 minutes, I'm going to share some ideas with you about how you can use LinkedIn passively or actively, and I'm going to run through many of the other points, ideas, tips and advice that are in my book on LinkedIn for accountants. And like all of my books for accountants, the tips and advice I share are largely equally applicable to many other people in business, professions, service industries and the like. But let's just start first of all with what happens where you think LinkedIn isn't working for you. Maybe you got caught up in the hype, and there is a lot of hype around. LinkedIn is a serious business networking tool if you use it correctly. You can use it passively or actively if you want to do so. Now, what do I mean by passively? I mean by ensuring that your profile is set out in such a way that if someone using LinkedIn to look for somebody like you with your skills, your experience, your background, that they'll find you amongst other people like you. When people tell me that LinkedIn doesn't work for them, I wonder if perhaps it's a bit like saying a car doesn't work when you are somebody who's got in the car and you've made no effort or nobody's shown you perhaps anything to do with the clutch or the gears. For you, the car is noisy and it's slow and it's cumbersome and it's not really pleasant to get from A to B. But with the car analogy, that's as much down to the fact that you don't really know how to use it properly, and it's worth finding that out before you dismiss it and say, no, I'm never going to drive a car. LinkedIn is much the same. If you've just got on board but haven't really made any effort to find out how to make it work, perhaps it's worth spending a few minutes doing that. And it doesn't need to take any longer than that if all you want to do is to have a presence on LinkedIn. The other complaint I hear about LinkedIn quite often is that people get sent so many emails by LinkedIn, and as a result their inbox is full, they can't sort the wheat from the chaff, and they're getting approached by loads of spammers and marketing people and others who don't really provide any interest to them. They're not of any value. They can't see any good reason for being connected to these spammers. Well, again, there are simple ways to avoid that happening if you know how to get the settings right on LinkedIn, and if you avoid a couple of very simple mistakes that a lot of people make, particularly when they've got caught up by the hype or they've followed some pretty unhelpful advice from others who maybe are not really the experts they claim to be. Now, I don't claim to be an expert. I claim simply to have made a lot of use of LinkedIn. I find it the most valuable of the online networking tools and platforms that I'm involved in. But it works for me because of the variety of roles that I have in terms of running networks for tax advisors and accountants, blogging, writing and speaking for audiences of accountants. I use it for lead generation as regards each of my business activities. Accountants can use it for lead generation too, so can you perhaps. But you don't have to do that. You could just sit there and wait for people to find someone like you. In my book, I talk about 6 key elements to ensure you get your profile right, to make it easy for people who are looking for someone like you to find you. I talk more about how you can use LinkedIn passively or actively. I look at what it means to use the status update facility and whether that's worth spending any time on. It's certainly very different to Twitter and Facebook, for example. I also look at the difference between endorsements and recommendations. Now, I would be the first to accept that the endorsements facility on LinkedIn does look like a bit of a game, and in some respects it is. But it's important to make sure you use it to your benefit and then don't spend any time on it. I certainly don't. Recommendations can be very valuable. It's great to receive recommendations, particularly if you make a lot of use of LinkedIn like I do. Giving recommendations are worthwhile to people who are looking for jobs or who are looking to generate business from LinkedIn. Recommendations, though, are very different to endorsements. A lot of people mix them up. Is it worth being involved in any LinkedIn groups or even a member of LinkedIn groups? It can be, depending upon what it is you want to get from LinkedIn. What's your LinkedIn strategy? I talk about how to use LinkedIn for lead generation and how you don't need to pay any money in order to do this. Indeed, at the time I'm recording this, I have yet to pay a penny to LinkedIn. I don't know if my views will change in the future, but it's not something I've seen as necessary. And the advice I normally share is that until you are trying to do things on LinkedIn because you know it's worth you doing them, and you can't do them without paying LinkedIn for the privilege, then I really wouldn't bother. Save your money. Save your time. And then finally, I talk about the business strategy you can adopt around using LinkedIn generally, and in particular 20 factors to consider in this respect alone. As I said earlier, my book on tips and advice for accountants using LinkedIn is probably equally relevant to many other professionals, many other service providers. You'd be very welcome to obtain your own copy. Just follow the links on this video and in the notes below. Thanks for watching, goodbye and good luck.